First up, they've got the Shaman Crackle. 2 mana, deal 3 to 6 damage, overload 1. Wow, what a card, was my first reaction. Like, it can deal 3, 4, 5, or 6 damage. It just has the greatest random variable in the game. I saw a few people's gut reaction, like, oh my gosh, Lightning Storm already decides so many games between 2 and 3. What about Crackle? And I got to thinking, like, Lightning Storm, you usually assume it's going to do the worst one. Sometimes you have to do a Hail Mary and then you take the 50-50 that'll kill something, or it's a nice bonus sometimes. Is Crackle something which you have to play assuming you're going to deal 3 damage? I think the answer is sometimes, similar to Lightning Storm. One of the things that Lightning Bolt has started to do is it's starting to sometimes not be in some decks because it doesn't quite do enough. It's always just 1 mana, deal 3 damage, and like, yes, with spell damage, like you have an Azure Drake and a spell totem out, you deal 5. So Crackle is a strictly better Lightning Bolt with the exception that it costs 2 mana instead of 1, and yes, that is a big deal, but it has a lot of upside. Sometimes you get to deal 6 damage to it. And I was thinking, like, yes, this is a wide range, but you can actually take advantage of this. Shaman has a lot of ways to manipulate damage, notably like having a lot of totems and then playing a Flame Tongue totem. So you start off with the Crackle, and then you see how much damage it does, and then you get to make your decision based on of that. And that's like going to happen some of the time, and I would argue most of the time. My opinion is that this card is actually good, and that it will be a skill to be able to think about all of the branching possibilities, how much damage you do. Yes, the variance on the spell is going to be high, but the skill of it comes in casting and expecting it to deal 3, and then coming up with contingency plans based on how well it does. And in truly desperate times, yes, sometimes you have to roll the hard 6. The card is, on average, 2 mana, deal 4.5 damage, which means it makes it a better Lava Burst. I think that this card is going to see a lot of play. And there will be whiners out there who are like, oh, my Crackle only does 3 damage all the time. It's all variance, it's all average. Like, most of the times the card draw that you get off the top of the deck matters so much more than whether or not your spell randomly does 3 damage versus 6 damage. I'm perfectly fine with a card like this, although I think this is on the high side of variance for sure. In Arena, this card is also going to be pretty good, like very cost-efficient removal. In a world where Holy Wrath is in Paladin is like an average card in Arena, Crackle is pretty good. He needed exactly that 6 damage Crackle to win the game. You're going to see some of that sometimes, but you could have easily just top decked like Alakir instead, or Doomhammer, or a Rockbiter when you have Doomhammer at. Whatever. Very efficient removal. I think this will replace Lightning Bolt. They already have like enough 1 damage spells with with Earthshock and with Rockbiter. Steamwheedle Sniper. What a card. The last few Hunter cards I've seen, I've always kept alluding to, like, you know, these cards don't fit into the current Hunter deck. Maybe in a Control Hunter deck or a later game Hunter deck. Here we've got a card which has got like Control Hunter written all over it. So 2 mana, 2/3, pretty efficient. It's okay, but that text, that's really good. It's very similar to Akanai Soul Priest, where your hero power can now damage minions. Well, actually, it turns into damaging minions. It's kind of similar to Shadow Form. It's a lot cheaper than Shadow Form, and you get a 2/3 on top of that. 4 mana, 2/3, Battlecry, deal 2 damage. In its most basic form, where you don't even consider that it can do repetitive damage. I'm pretty excited about this card. I definitely see it seeing play if Control Hunter turns out to be a thing. And I think that based on the cards revealed so far, I consider there to be a good chance that it will be a thing. In Arena, this card will be absolutely insane. Like, it's a 2 mana, 2/3 already with that super good ability. It's going to be completely insane, like one of the best cards in Arena. Wins games outright sometimes. It's a lot faster than Shadow Form, which is a card which does single-handedly win the game in Arena. It's slower. Yes, your sniper can get taken out, but sometimes you have board control, and then you play the Steamwheedle sniper, and then it's impossible to ever get board control back from you. And even in the worst case, it is that 4 mana, 2/3 Battlecry, deal 2 damage, which compares favorably to a card like Stormpike Commando, 5 mana, 4/2, deal 2 damage. Usually you hit minions, of course. Like, this is the card that I might like the most in Hunter. The class I despise the most, because the hero power is so straightforward and has no effect on the board. I love board control with Hunter. Control Hunter. Druid of the Fang. This one's rather tough to evaluate. So obviously, if this is a 5-mana 7/7, then you're getting a really good deal. That would replace many cards. If there were viable beasts. Right now, the only beast that people run consistently in Druid is Haunted Creeper. I believe one time in a tournament, I saw a really fancy card being played in a Ramp Druid deck, Emperor Cobra. Like, this upside of getting a 5-mana 7/7 is so large that it might be running interesting cards. And you see the Ironbeak Owl every once in a while, too. Stampeding Kodo is also an option. Druid of the Claw is not a beast. That would be pretty OP. Oh yes, and you do have the Power of the Wild Panther, which is a beast, which we'll almost certainly see play if you're playing Druid of the Fang. This card would obviously require you to change your deck a little bit, play a few beasts. Based on the beasts out there, it would probably be a more aggressive deck. What about like a Violet Teacher, Power of the Wild deck, which also runs Jungle Panther and Stranglethorn Tiger? You actually saw Stranglethorn Tiger being run sometimes for the Savage Roar. Jungle Panther might barely make the cut. I don't know. If you're gonna just try to throw in Druid of the Fang, like, you might as well try those options. But yeah, it's one of those cards which is going to change the way a Druid deck is constructed, potentially. In Arena, this card is going to be highly variable based on how many beasts you have. Similar to how Hunters want cards that synergize with beasts, Druids now have this small sub-theme, and we'll see how much it grows, if any. Gut Instinct is, if you have 5 beasts, this card is going to be very good if you're in Arena. I guess you would think of it more like Ancient Watcher. In Arena, you're fine with it if you have something like 3 activations. Druid of the Fang is at worst a 5-mana 4/4. So maybe if you have 5 beasts, it would actually be insane. If you have a beast, it's really good. If you don't have a beast, it's quite bad. Well, let's talk about Constructed a bit more. The reason why you actually are never going to see this card in a control deck is because control decks rarely can actually control the board early. Like, what they do is use spells like Swipe and Wrath and all that to control the board earlier. So it's only going to be seen in an aggressive Druid deck, because you have to have a beast out, and then you play the Druid of the Fang. And if you're trying to play like a beast and then Druid of the Fang, that's generally far too slow.
Goblins and gnomes. Goblins and gnomes. Both are super brilliant, but you would never know. Everything they seem to make is faulty or explode. Perfecting imperfection. Goblins and gnomes.
Unleash Goblin Fury!
For gnome regard!